What's up, everybody? Metal Dave here, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, bringing you another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today, we are joined again by our friend, comedian Don Jamieson. Don has a new comedy album out called No Sleep Til McSorley's. It is obviously a homage to Motorhead, the album No Sleep Till Hammersmith. And we learn a lot about McSorley's. It is a pub in New York City, I think he said.
Yeah.
And one of the oldest pubs in America.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why Don wanted to record his record there and why he likes to go drink there. And we heard all about that today. Lots of great stories from Don. We learned a lot about Lemmy and Motorhead. We got an update on That Rocks, the show that Don does with his former That Metal Show colleagues, Eddie Trunk and Jim Florentine. He brings us up to speed on that. And always just a great hang, man. He's just a chill dude and a lot of fun to talk to.
He also sort of alluded to he's got something new coming up because during the lockdowns, he was doing That Jamieson show. Yeah. And he's got something new with a new format coming pretty soon that he said he would come back on the on Talk Louder and talk about that at a later date. So that's cool. He's got something up his sleeve. He's great. He's on all of those Monsters of Rock cruises, and that's the last time I got to hang out with Don. And he's always great. He's always fun. He's always positive. There's never a bummer, or he's not carrying around any drama or anything. He's just super happy-go-lucky guy, and that's important. So yeah. Glad to have him.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure to have him on the show. I remember watching That Metal Show when it was on, and I was just so envious of those guys because they were doing what we are doing now with this podcast, you know, sitting down and talking to their heroes, their childhood heroes, and people they respect and people that played music that lives in their record collections forever. And I always thought that, you know, those three guys had the dream gig. So it's always great to get to sit down and talk with one of them and sort of pick their brains and learn some of the behind the scenes stuff.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Don Jamieson with us today on the Talk Louder podcast.
I listened to the record.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, we have the record. We listened to the record. I listened to the whole thing.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to put you through that, but
I made it.
I always appreciate it.
I made it. I made it. So
no, it's great.
I love the record. I think that I still giggle that you're on Metal Blade.
I know that rules.
One more thing I envy about you is that you're on Metal Blade, and I never got to be on fucking Metal Blade.
Me neither.
And I remember, right? It's a small club. You know, you label mates with arguably my favorite bands ever.
Armored Saint.
So many.
Yeah.
I mean, Slayer, Trouble. It just goes. Yeah, Fate's Morning.
King Diamond.
Keep going. Yeah.
Armored Saint, Lizzie Borden. Yeah.
Forever. It's just forever.
It's a long list.
Cannibal Corpse. Well, that was, for me, that was like, if they have bands like Cannibal Corpse on the label, I'm pretty sure they're going to let me say whatever the hell I want on my CDs.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah, censorship might not be a concern.
Yeah, so the conversation that we've had actually on the podcast about how your deal with Metal Blade for your comedy records came about was, if I recall, very like, so hey, yeah, you want to do this or what? And then you were like, thought he was kidding. You thought Brian Slagle was kind of joshing around, and then you were like, oh, you meant that shit? Like later on you were riding in a car and said, oh, you meant so you got more material. I'm waiting for you to turn some shit in for well, oh shit. You meant that shit?
Yeah, it was a year. He thought I was playing hard to get, and literally in less than 5 minutes, you know, in Brian Slagle's Prius, we had a record deal. So
wait a minute, Slagle drives a Prius?
Well, he did then. I don't know what happened. I remember he was a Prius. I'm like, yep, I'm in California.
The CEO of the, works for the heaviest fucking metal bands in the world. and he wants to save the world as well as fuck it up with evil metal.
Yeah. I remember when Jim Florentine met him before I did. And I remember him telling me that one night. He goes, I met Brian Slagle from Metal Blade. He's great. He's going to send me some Iron Maiden bootlegs. And I was like, I was jealous of Jim. Like, he started dating a hot chick that I was in love with. I'm like, I want Brian Slagle to send me Iron Maiden bootlegs.
So do I, man.
Yeah.
You should have just stole Jim's phone and stole so you could steal Brian's phone number and just start texting him like you were a hot chick.
Yeah.
So you're on, this is like your 5th album, is that right?
5th stand-up album, No Sleep Till McSorley's.
No Sleep Till McSorley's. It's your 5th album, stand-up album on Metal Blade. And by the way, all of your albums have landed in the top 10 or top 20 or something like that. It's pretty crazy that that you've had this great success with a comedy album on a metal label. It's pretty cool, man. Congratulations.
Well, thanks. I mean, all my albums are parodies of my favorite bands. So obviously this time, I'm ashamed it took me 5 albums to actually get to Motorhead, because for me, like, Motorhead and Thin Lizzy are 1A, 1B. But this just all came together at the right time. And I always tell people, I know the people who watch this podcast, they like this music, they get the packaging and all that stuff. But you don't have to be a fan of hard rock and metal to enjoy what's on the inside, even though I do talk about music as far as part of the content of the album. But you don't have to be a fan of this music to enjoy the album. You just got to be a fan of comedy.
Right. Yeah,
or
I got
whatever
that.
it is I do.
Yeah. Well, it's
something that closely resembles comedy.
Well,
we should tell people the name of the album is called No Sleep Till McSorley's, and it's obviously an homage to Motorhead, No Sleep Till Hammersmith. Why McSorley's? Tell us about this joint. Why is it near and dear to your heart?
Have you never been there, or are you just playing the
we don't know.
I've never been there. I live in Texas.
We don't know what a McSorley's is. Fill us in.
It's the oldest pub in New York City, and like so old, literally Abe Lincoln drank at McSorley's. And it's the kind of place where you go in with a bunch of friends and you sit at a big old wooden table and there's sawdust on the floor. And if there's seats at your open at your table, they put people next to you from all over the world. And, 2 hours later, you're best friends with people from Canada. You're going to Norway for the summer, and you're going to crash with your new friends that you met from Norway. And you sit there and drink McSorley's ale and you solve all the world's problems. And so when I put this set together, that's what this set is. It's solving all the world's problems. So I'm like, what a better place to do it than McSorley's in front of a bunch of beer drinkers and hellraisers.
It just sounds like a DNA experiment.
It sounds like a Monsters of Rock cruise. It's like all of a sudden you're best friends with somebody from, Arizona and Mexico, and, you're making plans for next year already.
Well,
it's like that without the STDs.
I think it sounds like a perfect place for you to do your whatever it is you do.
Comedy adjacent.
Right. But back to what I was going to say, crossover by way of, you're doing parody, at least the album covers are, and you mentioned the cruises and that metal show and accolades, as well as your fandom of, rock and roll music, heavy metal music, whatever. And that's what makes it crossover, because with the likes of your stylings, you could say Dice is in there. You're an old school comic in a new era. And I that's attractive, number one, whether there's the spin-off of rock music involved at all. And I feel like it's a small club when I tried to think of as many stand-up comedians who have a potty mouth like you, who sorry, that
you're not allowed to say potty.
That have you're not allowed to say mouth, Dave. So Jim Brewer, that have the rock and roll, the heavy metal involved in their act. And Jim Brewer is like, if I go back, he's like maybe the guy that I first heard talking about rock and roll artists within his material. But then, I heard about you and Jim and just what you guys do as a team and beyond the threesomes. And
We're still talking about comedy, right?
yeah, we are talking about comedy.
Okay, just making sure.
No, but the crossover of music with comedy, I think it's a small club. Would you agree? And can you think of anybody before Brewer that was maybe doing stuff like that?
Oh man, well, it used to be like back in the 70s, it was really cool for a comic to open for bands. Like the
Yeah.
70s and then even into the 80s, Dice opened for Guns N' Roses at the Rose Bowl, and Kinnison, had the whole thing with the Wild Thing with all the Sunset Strip guys, and Sam Bobcat Goldthwait used to go out and open for rock bands. I think he did the first tour in America with Nirvana, actually.
Okay, see, so you're seasoned and schooled in the information that I'm kind of dabbling in order to ask you the question. Yeah, you just answered the question. So it goes way
But
back.
I made all that shit up. None of it's true.
Oh, really? Because
you needed an answer, so I just made it.
I must have dreamed the Kinnison, because you mentioned the Kinnison, and that was a big deal as far as all of the hard rock bands and metal bands and stuff back then, making videos with him. He would show up in their videos and movies they were in and stuff like that. So, yeah, I see how that's a hand-in-hand bit now. But, maybe prior, and what about in the 70s? Do you recall any?
Yeah, I just know that there were comics back that was more of a regular thing where comics would open for bands. So I can't think of anybody specifically from back then, but there was a long period of time where it was cool, and then there was a long period of time where it was definitely not cool.
Wow.
And it was not cool basically from grunge on until we started doing that metal show, and people would come on and ask if, like Dee Snider was the first one to come on and say, hey, Don and Jim, would you like to open for Twisted Sister? And we're like, yeah, of course. We learned how to say motherfucker on stage because of you.
Yeah.
And that's how it all.
That's half your act. Thank you, Dee.
Thank you, Dee. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you because you get a lot of inspiration. I've always gotten a lot of inspiration from rock frontmen, just as much as comics. So to me, it was always I always thought it was a cool thing. And I was happy I wear it on my sleeve as a badge of honor now that I, not only do I play the comedy clubs, but I get to go out and do it with bands too. And, I think crowds are definitely more open-minded to it as well.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, keeping with the Motorhead theme on your new album, No Sleep Till McSorley's, the intro is provided by none other than Phil Campbell from Motorhead. How did that come about?
Here's why this album was meant to be exactly the way it came out. Because I was in McSorley's with all the people that work with me on this album in terms of the guy who directed. There'll be a video special as well, and the guy who built the stage and the engineer. Like we're all drinking buddies. So we were in McSorley's, all having McSorley's ale one day. And I'm saying, where should I record this album? And as I'm looking around, I'm going, wait a minute, I should do it right here. And within an hour, I renegotiated my deal with Metal Blade. I got in touch with, and I named the album No Sleep Till McSorley's because I knew I had to do Motorhead. I emailed Motorhead's manager, Todd Singerman, who's a friend, and asked him if I could use the Motorhead font to put my name in it. And he goes, anything you want. So, of course, I write back, how about the original artwork from No Sleep Till Hammersmith? And he sent it, even the back cover, too. He sent it to me. He goes, absolutely. He sent me high-res versions of that. I texted Phil Campbell to see if he'd do the guitar intro and outro. And I got the owner of McSorley's on the phone and said, hey, I know you don't really do performances here, but I'd like to do my comedy album here. And I said, how much would it be to rent it out for the night? And she goes, how long you been coming here? I said, like 30 years. She goes, you paid enough.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in 1 hour of day drinking, it all came together. So it was meant to be.
That McSorley's ale is some magical elixir, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Man,
Wow.
that's a huge triumph.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love that you're sort of putting the spotlight on this club that I never heard of, but obviously it's near and dear to the people in that region, in that area. And I'm sure they were like, if I owned the club, I'd say, sure, man, record your album in my place. That'd be awesome.
It's an old pub, isn't it? It's just a pub.
Yeah, Abe Lincoln drank there, apparently.
Yeah.
I thought that was part of your act. Is that accurate history?
Yeah, they have the chair that he sat on when you first walk in the door. The thing about the portrait on the wall is for the act, but it is true that Abe Lincoln drank there. But you know what? The thing I love about McSorley's, and people come from all over the world to go to McSorley's, is that it's real social media. Like I was saying, like if you're at a big round table with 10 chairs and you're with you and 3 buddies, there's still 6 chairs open. They put people. Now you're sitting there. You're not just going to stare at each other. Nobody does this in McSorley's.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Nobody's on their phone.
No. So everyone talks. That's social media. That's actual social media. So that's the thing I've always loved about that place. And it's become a place over the years for me and a certain group of friends. So like we don't lose touch, because you know how life goes, man. People get married or divorced and kids, and they had to take a job here and they don't live in the city. And that was always the gathering place. Like we'll always reconnect back in McSorley's.
Yeah. It's your social hub. Are you going to tour for this release or what? What's the story on doing some live dates?
Yes, I'm opening. I'm touring with a Whitesnake cover band called "Here I Go Again." And we're going to be playing.
I don't know if this is part of your act or if this is serious. It sounds like part of your act.
I don't unless I go out with a band, I don't do any kind of formal tour. I'm just always on the road. So, for people, they can follow me on my social media. I list all my gigs up there. But yeah, comic is normally a little different than bands. We don't usually go out on a formal tour. We're just working pretty much every weekend, fly-ins, fly-outs, local, wherever. But yeah, I'm hoping to jump on something with the band this summer, because I really do. I like, combining those worlds where I get the brotherhood of being on a bus with a band and that camaraderie, and we're going town to town and we're going to dominate this town and now we're going to here and all that. But I get none of the drama of being in a band.
Yeah.
Right.
You just got to look out for yourself. Yeah.
I'm the comic. Leave me out of this. You guys figure it out.
Speaking of bands, I've seen some video clips lately of you on stage playing guitar with to AC/DC covers. I didn't know that you played. Or how long has this been going on?
Only on the cruise.
It was on the cruise. Okay. Well, no.
Is that your only gig on the cruise?
Well, no, I did Rare Hair. Yeah. I got my one song that I know I can nail. So, if you want to do it, I could play it.
It's a good fucking song.
If you want to do Dirty Deeds, I could play the hell out of it, But I did it in Puerto Rico too. I took my girlfriend to Puerto Rico, and I jumped up with the band a couple nights and played acoustic because they were fans. So
cool.
That was fun too. So yeah, you're not going to see me playing, Dream Theater, stuff. It's like, give me a good 3-chord, blues song, and I could probably passably get by.
That's all you need.
I saw those video clips and I was like, I had no idea, but there you were doing your thing. It was kind of cool, man. Is it safe to say you're? Yeah, I was going to say, is it safe to say you're a frustrated musician who sort of resorted to comedy to kind of keep you in the game?
That is some commentary on my act. Did you have to resort to doing comedy?
I didn't mean it in a derogatory.
That bad a musician, and you became that bad of a comic? Oh my God!
Shitty guitar player, great comic.
Hey, okay, there you go. Maybe that's better.
I played guitar when I was a kid, all the way up through my teenage years. I was in bands, and I think I just plateaued. I just didn't have the passion to go further. And it's because I loved and still love music so much. I mean, I couldn't imagine my life without it. I said, let me leave this to the people who really have a passion for it. And then the comedy thing came later on down the road. But I knew I wanted to be a performer, and but playing the guitar up on the pool stage at the Monsters of Rock cruise with Phil from Armored Saint and all those guys.
Was Gonzo with your drummer that day?
No, somebody else, but
Oh.
but it was just it was a different high than doing stand up. Like I came off, I was like shaking from one song. It felt really good, and listen, Jason knows very well that this is why we do it.
That's right.
Yeah. You mentioned something in your current album, No Sleep Till McSorley's. You talk about the power of music as a healing thing, and I think we can all relate to that. But I wanted to ask you, what album got you through a really tough time in your life?
Yeah, all of them, but yeah, specifically, like, any Motorhead. I mean, I kind of lived a lot of my life through Lemmy's lyrics and things he said in interviews that really always resonated with me. Like, not that I changed who I was, but like stuff he would write in his lyrics would feel so profound to me, because I would go, man, that's exactly how I think, And I remember when we interviewed him the first time for that metal show, we did a thing called the High Tea with Lemmy, and it was in London, and it was the night before they played Hammersmith, actually. So I've actually been to that famous venue, and we did a thing called Motor Myths. Here's a bunch of stories that people have spoken about over the years, and let's ask Lemmy if they're true or not. And one of them was, Lemmy, is it true if someone gives you $1,000, you'll play on their album? And he instantly went, no. If I want to play on someone's album, I'll play on it. If I don't, there's not enough money in the world to make me do it. I said, that's exactly how I feel. Like a lot of his songs, he says, I'm not driven by greed, and he's not driven by money and all, material pursuits and all that. And it's, God, that's always been me. It's like, you do things for the passion of doing them, not for the money. If I thought I was how would I have known, 24 years ago when I started doing this, I'd be on a TV show with two of my best friends talking about music and telling jokes all over the world. I could have never done that if I was driven by the things that a lot of people are driven by, which, are not pure.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the same time, I feel like, even though, the music sort of defines us, it is not all of us, right? It's like, it doesn't, like, okay, not driven by greed. Okay, well, if you were, you probably wouldn't be playing music.
True.
Especially not rock and roll.
Right. So to be driven by greed and you're in a rock band doesn't really make sense to me. It's like, I think about scenes from Succession or something. It's those kind of people that are driven by greed because they're just insane with the idea of owning everything on the block, So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting that you did say, and you do say, and you champion the idea that music is a healer. And I've always thought that because of the way that it makes you feel. But when the lyrics are profound and have something that touches you and makes you think a different way for the first time that day that you heard it, that can be life-changing in your next goal, in your next class, in your next movement, in your next, okay, shit, that's going to make me go out and do something that's because of that. It's like a part of your brain opened up, and it's a rock and roll song. It's some geezer like Lemmy wrote a lyric that changed your fucking whole perspective on something. It's kind of amazing that the smarts we get from just listening and reading the lyrics, the liner notes on the, smelling the album cover, and you know what I mean, just whoa, it's kind of, it's still not the music defining you. It's within the knowledge within the music that is sort of helping you along as much as anything.
Yeah, the message kind of comes through all the noise. You know, the noise is great. It's what makes you move. But there's if you're paying attention and it's done well, and I echo Don's sentiments about Lemmy being an absolute poet. You know, he says things that you were thinking, but you could have never said it that well. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's when you go, oh man, because I relate to that, and that's what I was thinking, but I couldn't have put it that well. And the way he put it, now it's stuck with me forever.
Super smart gent, and
Yeah.
very very knowledgeable about a lot of things, and not just rock and roll.
Yeah.
I've always thought that, and God, we're still learning from Uncle Lem, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're all
Exactly.
still learning from him. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Do you think he was like as liberal? I mean, I saw him as very liberal and open-minded to anything and everything. He never bashed anyone. Just because he didn't like the sound of your music or the style of music that you played and performed, for your business or whatever it is, he just because he didn't love your art, he respected you as the art. He may have hated your songs, but he didn't hate your game. He could
Yeah.
relate to you in the game.
Because
Yeah.
Lemmy is one of those guys that respected anyone that had the balls to get on stage and just throw it out there.
Or
And
just the balls to do something that's as harebrained as I'm going to write songs and make a living out of it. That sounds fucking harebrained. Just like being a stand-up comic. Mom, Dad, I'm quitting college because I'm going to be a professional potty mouth comedian.
Yeah.
how did that conversation go with your parents, by the way, when you told them that this was going to be your career path?
Yeah. There was a lot of silence.
I heard some choke there. Wow.
Yeah, it was the first few years were a little rough, but they came and saw me once really early on, and I didn't have much going on in terms of material or stage presence. So I think they got a little nervous, and then they probably came back after about 4 years, and it was kind of getting my legs under me then, and they went, all right, he might have something going on here. And so, but yeah, my parents are, like Lemmy, they're liberal, open-minded about, they just wanted me and my sister to be happy. But yeah, Jason, I agree with what you were saying. Like Lemmy was a guy who, he spoke, when he spoke, he wanted to be substantial. He hated small talk. He did. If you're sitting in a room and go, man, it's been raining for a couple of days, huh? Like he didn't. He liked to sit and get into shit.
Yeah.
And the topics would change. And as the conversation flowed, they would, because I remember the first time I sat down and had a conversation with which, like, to sit and have a Jack and Coke with Lemmy, that's a bucket list thing, right? Like I can die now. It's all, like everything's gravy. But we talked about, war, politics, religion, Viagra, underwear, like you talk about everything. And he liked, and comedy, because he was a huge comedy fan. And he actually turned me on to some really funny British humor. So he liked if you could hang and talk about a variety of stuff. So yeah, that's the kind of guy he was. Like he was a man of substance.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. I think Jason said it earlier. I mean, people are always kind of, I think, a little bit surprised when they see an interview or read an interview with him and go, wow, there's some thought behind all this. I mean, he was a very intellectual guy, despite the outward persona,
Yeah, he may or may
not book smart, but life smart.
He may or may not be a hugger, but you would want to, with the knowledge you walk away from a good conversation with him. I can probably count them on one hand, but the times that I got to sit with just me and him and for like 2 hours, 3 hours or more, I cherish, because I was just like, first, once you get over the fact that, oh, well, okay, here it goes. I'm going to go head to head with Lemmy, you know? Yeah, I cherish those moments and I recall, and there's things that people perceive about someone like him, and even Motorhead's just music, you know, how abrasive it is. And first off, they were a blues band. They were just louder than hell.
Yeah.
And if Lemmy could have sang like, you know, Paul McCartney and Tom Petty, he would have. But his disposition, he conquered all, you know, nope, you're not pretty. Nope, you sing like a, you know, like you're gargling razor blades. Nope, you dress funny. Nope, you're a hit. Nope, you're all high and drunk all the time. Nope, you know, all of the things that he had everything stacked against him. And he made it work and became iconic with his own version of rock and roll. And, you know, hats off. And I'm glad that you're sort of like championing all of that and being, this sounds weird, but kind of a freedom fighter to say anything you want into your microphone in a smelly bar and celebrate rock and roll at the same time. That's good. That's good work if you can get it.
But I don't look as good as Lemmy in those Daisy Duke shorts. I got to admit, you know,
or red Speedo.
Who does?
I've seen him red Speedo. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but we were out on that Operation Rock and Roll, and I think we were in Weedsport, New York. I even remember the fucking name. Yeah. Anyway, we pull up. We're parked behind Lemmy's bus, Motorhead's bus, rather. And we're walking towards the front of the bus, and all of a sudden appearing just, you know, windshield and the buses have a marquee out front. There's said slow death. So Motorhead's bus, the marquee said slow death, right? Because you're on a death trap anyway. A fucking tour bus is a death trap. Because you're not in control. You're in the back of the bus in your bunk, and somebody you don't know, you're paying a lot of money to drive you. Here's all of your lives in one person's. Anyway, it's a death trap. Slow death. 2 like pool chairs, like fold up lawn chair, kind of, you know, loungers right in front of the bus under the marquee. Slow death. That's important. A little table with some Jack and cigarettes and whatever. And I think Wurzel is in one of them, and Lemmy's in the other. Wurzel is dressed to go on stage.
Yep.
Yeah, denim, leather, you know, long sleeve maybe. Sleeves cut off, but just getting a sunburn. Big old, like, grandma sunglasses, you know, doesn't give a shit. Headband, Wurzel, and, you know, he's hanging, smoking, drinking with Lemmy. And Lemmy might as well have been butt naked. All the man was wearing was a red Speedo. So imagine just this postcard, this Motorhead postcard of Wurzel ready to go on stage going, "Hi, Mom," you know, and Lemmy only in red Speedo, cop shades, red Speedo, slow death above, click, Mike Watson, bass player, Dangerous Toys, took a picture of that. I don't know if he has the negative. I don't know where that picture is, but oh my God. You can't make this shit up. But the Daisy Dukes, I have it on video. I need to make a copy and send it to you. God, the name of the venue, same tour. We're in the dressing room. Lemmy's in the Daisy Dukes. Nothing else. Daisy Dukes. No cop shades this time. Out of his mind. Walking around, Wurzel in tow. Again, fully dressed, grandma shades, had Wurzel, just how you picture. I say Wurzel, you see the picture.
Sure.
And he comes in our dressing room and he sits down on the couch and picks up Danny's guitar and just starts fucking around on Danny's guitar. We're all in there. We're getting ready to go on stage. We're like, Slimmy, we don't care. Come on in, take over, steal our shit. We don't give a shit. We're about to go to work anyway. And he sits down and I go, hey, play Leavin' Here. So he starts playing Leavin' Here, and I'm singing and I'm clapping along. Danny breaks out the harmonica. I have it on video.
Wow.
I've seen that. It's great.
Oh my God.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. If there's any way I could see that, it'd be incredible.
Yeah, I'll burn a copy for you.
Rest in peace, Wurzel. I remember the first time I met him he was wearing a Cincinnati Bengals jacket, like a satin jacket.
Yeah.
And I go, hey, Wurs, you're a big American football fan? And he goes, no. He goes, why? I go, oh, you're wearing a Cincinnati Bengals. It's a football team. He goes, oh, I just like tigers.
Simple.
Yeah. He just like the tiger on the back and on the chest pocket. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, keep it simple, man. You know, the heart wants what the heart wants.
There's a bit on your album where you talk about, comedy being more offensive than ever, maybe in this politically correct climate. And you reference Dave Chappelle and Will Smith and the fact that these guys have been publicly attacked for doing comedy, basically. I wanted to ask you if you've ever had a moment like that. What's the craziest thing that's ever happened to you on stage as a comic?
I've knock on my kitchen table here. I've never been physically assaulted on stage, but yeah, I do talk about that, obviously, because we all saw what happened with Chris Rock, and Dave Chappelle got attacked on stage, and Craig Robinson from The Office. So, because people are, hypersensitive these days. Luckily, I'm nowhere near in any of those guys' leagues, so no one's really looking to take me out. But there's been a million crazy things. The one I could think of that comes to the top of my mind is I was playing my home club here in New Jersey, Uncle Vinny's Comedy Club, and I'm doing a little crowd work, and this really drunk woman with big, giant, brand new breast implants, so you could fully tell, and she's showing them off, and she's hammered, and she keeps getting up and walking through the room, and she's being disruptive, and she's being loud. And I start engaging with her to try to shut her down a bit. And then I basically came out and said, congratulations, who bought those for you? And she goes, that motherfucker over there. And she points across the room, and there's a guy and she's on a date, and a guy across the room, he's on a date. And that turns out to be her ex-boyfriend who bought her the boobs. And now they ran into each other at the comedy club. So now they start screaming at each other across the room. They're standing up. The girls are yelling at each other. And I'm like, good night, everybody. I walk off stage. I walked off 15 minutes early because I'm like, it's, full chaos. I thought a fight was going to break out. So they finally kick them all out. The crowd chants for me to come back up and finish. So I go back up. I finish my set. I grab my stuff, I go to leave, and I go out to my car, and I just see lights flashing like crazy, and I see ambulances and cop cars, and the woman literally blacked out right behind my car, and I had to call an ambulance. So I had to then I had to wait another half hour for them to clear out so I could actually leave. So
all in a night's work, huh?
Well, all because Don said, hey, who bought those for you?
Yeah, right.
Don Jamieson, the Avalanche.
So
and I should say about on the album, because you brought up the theme of music being the healer, but and Jason knows this, that's straight out Glenn Hughes's mouth. Glenn Hughes always, music is the healer. When he says it sounds better because it's that British accent, but it is true.
And he's also kind of a wizard.
Yeah.
He's literally like a gnome, like a healing rock and roll gnome sort of wizard.
He's a giant rock and roll crystal, like a healing crystal in human rock and roll form. And that, and I toured, you guys know, because you saw me, I opened for the Dead Daisies for a month in 2021. And, that's what he says on stage every night. Music is the healer. Music is the healer. And when I put together this album, I was like, by the time you get to the end of it and we talk about all the problems in the world, I want to now unite everybody and heal everybody. And how do we do that? We do it through music. And so I love the way the album resolves itself with conversation about music and how it is the uniter and how it is the healer and how it is diverse, inclusive, and all those good things that we love, but without jamming it down anyone's throat. And I mean, I don't know too many people. I wouldn't surround myself with people who are not, whose lives don't have, that music doesn't have some kind of impact on their life, you know, and most of my friends, it's a major part of their life.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's why I asked you about that earlier, because I could tell that, you know, you could only speak that if you really relate to it. What I was trying to get out of you earlier was to name like a couple albums that really got you through some tough times. Because I can think in my own experience, I can name about 2 or 3 albums that I remember just being such a calming force or such a relatable friend, if you will, at a time in my life when things weren't going so great. And oddly enough, they're not necessarily metal or hard rock records, but it was something about the vibe and the message that was relating to me at the time. I always go back to Iggy Pop's American Caesar record. And that was kind of a sleeper in his collection. I mean, out of his catalog, not many people reference that album. But to me, at the time it came out, it spoke to me. And my wife actually walked down the aisle to a song off that album. That she agreed to that. And I was
He's a keeper.
he's a keeper, yeah. But you know, there's records like that that have sentimental value, I guess is what I'm saying. And it's the power of music, man. And all 3 of us here and people listening and watching, I know can relate to that. That's why we're doing a podcast, because it's so important to our lives.
It's pretty much the reason we have this shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what we're talking about. And that's why we it's a go-to on this show. You can't think of any record or records that really spoke to you as a young person?
Well, you know, I think like a lot of people, you know, when you hit about 25, you get that sort of weird. That's kind of a weird year for a lot of people, like around that age, 25. So if I'm 57 now, what year was it when I was 25? So that was what, 32 years ago. Carry the 3, divide by 7. Whatever albums came out that year, whatever albums came out 32 years ago, were probably saved my life.
Well, it would have been late 80s, probably.
We're the same age then. If you're 57, I'll be 57 next week. So I don't do math either, but I know what you're saying.
88, I was 21. So
okay. 92 or 93.
Yeah, 92, 93. Anything that came out around that time. And again, it's, you know, I think what came out around that time was Motorhead 1916.
That's a great album.
That's right. And the Black album.
That could possibly be Lemmy's crowning achievement lyrically.
Yeah,
so
I think
I know
right.
for a fact that's a pivotal album for me. Like just really digging in on all those lyrics, and you know, and the whole album's a banger, you know. And I apologize if I live next to a firehouse, so if you hear
far out,
an alarm in the background.
I was wondering what that was. That's all right.
But you're right about 1916. I mean, we were talking about Lemmy's poetic lyrics earlier, and there is a whole slew of them on that record. That song "Going to Brazil," where he talks about here comes the lady with another Jack and Coke. I mean, because we've all been that guy, but we
the booze is free, airline going broke. Here comes the lady with another Jack and Coke. Come on.
Yeah.
That is one of the fun. I have 5 comedy albums out, and I don't have a line on any of them as funny as that line.
Yeah, right.
Well, he's truthing. He's not even boasting. He's telling you exactly what that shit was real. That really happened. He's sitting there.
That's the beauty of it. That's the point we were making earlier. It's like it's a thought that we've all had, but we either wouldn't put it into words, or if we thought of it, we would think, it's probably not good enough for a song. But when Lemmy does it, it's genius.
It's different. It's different.
Yeah.
I always attribute to some of that being, and this could be way out, this may not even hold water at all, but you know, the easy peasy lemon squeezy, you know, the whole Brit thing about how they have a rhyme for all that, and it's passed down generational from, you know, your grandparents and your great grandparents and stuff like that, as far as I recall of how that goes. But they have a rhyming scheme for everything throughout the day. You know, from something as mundane as getting your kid to take the cough medicine. you know. I feel like Lemmy took that to a whole other like hardcore level because he's able to make a situation rhyme even if the word is kind of silly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He really made it work. I've got a handwritten lyric framed on my office wall. It's literally bolted to the wall over there. But Lemmy and I spoke on the phone a few times in the early to mid 90s, and he wrote some lyrics for me that I never used in a song. The Toys demoed a song, and I used them, but the song never went anywhere. And it's yellow pad. It's Lemmy's handwriting, ballpoint pen. It's signed.
Oh my God.
One of a kind. It's right there. I'll have to text you a photograph of it so you can see it. And there's some shit in there. I gave him the idea for the lyrical content, and like a few days later, he's like, "Check your mailbox in a couple days." I'm like, "Holy shit! I can't believe this actually happened."
Right, and you didn't have to give him $1,000.
No, I didn't. He wanted
so he
to
obviously
help.
liked you.
He wanted to help.
He said, "If I want to do it, I'll do it. If I don't, there's not enough money." And that's incredible. And oh God, it made me just think of I just lost it. But it goes back to what you were saying before, Jason, about sitting and studying the lyrics and stuff. And that's why we love the physical copies of things still, because that's how we were back then. And I'm going to put this out on vinyl as well.
Oh, sweet.
Because I'm old school. And especially this genre of music is so visual, and so you want to have something to hold in your hand. And I think that's important because then you don't put as much thought into the lyrical content and things like that. If it's just disposable, if you just buy air, it doesn't mean as much. So yeah, for you to have those lyrics up on your wall, like that blows my mind out, and it's not even mine.
Me and my wife like to have physical copies of albums and cassettes and CDs, as well as like video games. Because, you can go online and download a movie or a game or something. It's like applications, but it's air, like you're saying. It's okay, well, what if my Amazon account blows up and there's no more internet and there's no more data? Oh, I've got a DVD player. I can listen to music. I can do a lot of things with analog gear. But if the internet goes out, all these people who are going, "Oh, my brain, I don't have a brain anymore." Yeah. Well, bullshit. What, all those books, it's called a library. See that over there? That's a record collection. You see this landfill behind me? I've got a VHS player. I've got a cassette deck, multiple. I'm good.
Yeah.
What I remembered I wanted to say, and I agree 100% because I have a shelf of tons of books on it. I have my vinyl collection. Yeah, man. I have my CD. You got it. It's a must. But you guys, Broken Teeth, did the absolute best tribute song to Lemmy and Motorhead out of all the ones that were done. And Metallica did one, and a lot of other bands did them, and some of them are very good. But you guys blew it out of the park.
Thank you for that. Yeah, Never Dead. So I have a little bit of a romance with the story of how that came, and I believe I may have told you the story before. I went and saw Motorhead, and it was just a mere months before Lemmy passed away. He came out and played 3 songs, and he came out with a cane. They propped him up. I was like, oh shit, right? And everyone was kind of like murmuring and, like, oh my God, kind of a thing. And they go in and the crowd roars after song 1 and song 2, and something was a little disconnect. And Campbell and Mickey D were really, holding it together for him. And it was because the tempos were kind of slow, And he apologized. He said, I can't. He stopped in the middle of a song, and he says, I can't, but I'll be back in a minute. And they came out and they got him, and about 10 minutes went by. He came back out and apologized. And it was obvious that he was not healthy. He's not doing well. right? An army of grown men, a sea, the whole, not a dry eye in the house. No one was running to go get refunds.
Yeah.
Zero refunds. Okay. I left the club I didn't blink. My mouth was on the floor. I'm like, this is what is going to happen. All of our, I'll just say heroes, that might be heavy for some people to think of, idols, legends. You pick your own word to feel comfortable within your own soul. I walk out of that. I'm writing the chorus before I get home. I was so compelled to put a tribute, to put in words what I just saw and what it means to me when I go back, and the history, and just as a fan first and foremost, and what those guys did for and to rock and roll and blues and everything else, right? And Lemmy's especially, right? Because the lineup changes, you have different versions of Motorhead, kind of. It's not all the same. Those first 3, 4, 5 records feel different than the rest of the catalog when you kind of look. I mean, Another Perfect Day is its own, it's almost like it's a different band.
Yeah, it's an outlier. Yeah.
So it's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I love Black Sabbath, Born Again. It feels like a different band for some reason. You see what I'm saying? For the same reason.
Yeah.
So you think about all of that shit going through your head. Anyway, the lyrics are, I'm trying to be that, have that Lemmy spice through my head and my heart when I write that lyric, so you can kind of go through it. And I think that you got that. Not everybody understood that. As a matter of fact, probably you're the only one that ever talks about Never Dead. Maybe Metal Dave does too.
Well, Laurence too. But I'm gonna have to break out my broken teeth finally after this, and I'm getting a little misty here, man. Just hearing that story, that's incredible.
It was a big fucking deal, Don. It was it fucked me up. I cried when he died. I cried.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
I saw him 2 weeks before he died, and
Wow.
but I at his 70th birthday party at the Whiskey,
Wow.
and I knew that was the last time I was going to ever see him.
Yeah.
I could just tell.
Yeah.
But as sad as I was, and as sad as we all were,
Yeah.
I'm glad he died with his boots on, which is what he wanted to do.
That's right.
I'm going to go out on my terms. He'd done everything on his terms up until the day he died, which is, I'm getting on that stage and I'm going to play until I'm dead. And he did his, obviously he had, towards the end, he had some good nights and some not so good nights, but he continued on, and he never wanted to stop until it was time to go to that great Rainbow Bar and Grill in the sky.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting that it's so sad, but we're smiling. We're so happy because of what he said and did, and we're championing that. And that's the spirit. That's the spirit of all of this. It's why we have a podcast. It's why you cross over your material with something that you really feel. It gives you bigger balls. You know what I mean? It gives you, you crossing, putting the rock music with your act. It gives you, it's like, man, I'm a headbanger and I'm a comic. I'm going to do this at the same time. And the fact that you're going out there and doing that like that and championing Motorhead, all your heroes, is fucking great.
I'm gonna plug that song real quick. The song that we're talking about that Broken Teeth did is called Never Dead. It's on the Four on the Floor album. So anyone listening or watching, if you want to revisit that song, Never Dead, Broken Teeth, Four on the Floor album, it's awesome. What I thought was really cool when I heard that song is the story that you told me that it came, by the time the song came out, the album came out, Lemmy had passed. So people were thinking that you wrote it as a tribute after he passed away, but the reality is you wrote it before he died.
That's right, because of the concert.
It was a living tribute to him while he was still alive. And back to the show that you're talking about, I believe that was here in Austin.
Yep.
He did 3 songs and couldn't finish the set.
It was at Emo's.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, at Dawn, as you know, a hard rock, heavy metal audience cannot be is sometimes not the most forgiving bunch in the world. But there was not a person bitching about the fact that the show didn't go off as planned. They were just deeply concerned for Lemmy. They felt honored that they were even there in the first place to see that and witness that. And I don't know that I've ever seen or heard anything like that where a performer can walk off stage 3 songs into a set that you paid your hard-earned money for and nobody's complaining.
There's not a riot. No one got hurt. Everyone's hugging and crying. And
yeah, it was an amazing tribute, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's the thing everybody said is, Lemmy that's as real deal as you could possibly get. He walked the walk and he talked the talk, and there was no pretense whatsoever. Lemmy was Lemmy. And, like I said, there is only ever, and ever will be one Lemmy. He was just a unique guy. And you saw when he passed, the level of respect that musicians had for him, who were putting out on their social media, just how much, him and Motorhead meant to them. And, a lot of people you wouldn't expect as well. But obviously, again, I'm ashamed it took me 5 albums to pay tribute to them, but it was really meant to be this way.
Well, you did it right. I mean, you got the album cover, you got the font, you got the blessing of everyone concerned. So if it took you 5 albums to knock it out of the park, then that's fine.
Yeah, you got the guitar player from Motorhead to open and close your record. That's pretty badass.
So I wanted to ask also, there's a bit in on the album where you tell a joke and it doesn't quite go over as well as you hoped. And you say something to the audience like, it's okay, we can just edit in a bigger round of applause. So, when we were all kids and we were listening to live albums, we just assumed that was straight recording right out of the arena. That was what people at the concert experienced. And then we've learned over 30 or 40 years that live albums are barely ever live. So in the context of a comedy album, how live is a live album? And are you ever tempted to doctor the applause or the audio in general just to make it more impactful?
Well, obviously, I left something in that didn't get as big a laugh as I expected, as you said. So yeah, no, I mean, that's just what happened in the moment. So, instead of chopping it, because I did 2 shows, and that's what most comics do: 4 shows, 6 shows, and then they, that's the magic of it is, you got several shows to pick from, and you could sort of pick and choose. Oh, I did this joke better on this one or whatever. I just did 2, 90. But for me, when I do my albums, I want it to be almost all just one of the shows, because especially with comedy, there's such a rhythm to it. And even if you have a really good editor, I could still feel it. It gets choppy after a while. If you're picking from 6 different shows, I can feel it, So I like to leave things just to flow as much as possible. The only stuff I took from the second show that night was a few bits that I forgot on the first show. I just straight up forgot them. So I made sure I did them the second show, and we popped those in there. But yeah, a moment like that, I'm like, no, you got to leave that. That's what happened in the moment, and that was in the flow of what was happening. So, let's keep that in there. Let's just leave it as is.
I thought it was funny.
I wanted to get a bigger laugh, but it didn't. So there you go.
I thought it was funny that you go, oh, it's okay, we can just edit some shit right here.
I know, that's why I asked.
Part of the joke.
That totally stuck out to me.
But I would have cut that out and just added a bigger laugh if I was, you know what I mean? To me, it's funnier that I left in that I was going to do that. And then I did.
The humor is almost that it backfired. It didn't even backfire. It just kind of, it didn't live up to your expectations. And that in itself is the humor. So I love that you left it in there.
Sometimes the magic is the mistake.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
And even music is like that too. I feel like there were accidents on Led Zeppelin records and Aerosmith records where you hear noises in the background and the engineer's like, man, I'm trying to clean up this da-da-da. And the band is like, fuck you, leave that shit in there. That's fucking, dude, that's osmosis. That's fucking, that's alchemy. That's magic. That's that's some crazy wizard shit that's going on. And we like that. It's almost like you hear a door creak. Oh man, I'm sorry. Well, if you wouldn't have apologized for it, it would have been magic because, it gives it a ghost, and you want ghosts in music and art are cool because it's kind of a natural thing, right? Supernatural.
Sometimes supernatural, yeah, and you're right. Those moments that you couldn't create if you wanted to. You go, yeah, let's keep that. Like on my, I think my second album, Hellbent for Laughter.
I keep telling him he's got to do an Anthrax one called Among the Laughing.
Oh, by the way, David, I have a stockpile now from David leaving comments on my Facebook about album titles.
Yeah. The other one is Scorpions Laugh Drive.
Yeah.
You need to do Laugh Drive, man.
Wow, that's pretty good.
See, guys like him keep egging me on, and I keep putting these comedy albums out that nobody's asking for.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
There's a moment on that album where, because it's in a BYOB.
Hey, Don, club. He's my muse as well.
Yeah,
he's my muse as well.
You know,
yeah.
Where somebody, this woman's drinking this big giant bottle of wine, in the front row, and she's getting a little tipsy, obviously, and she hits it, and it goes to the ground, and it clanks across the floor, and I'm in the edit room with my producer, and he goes, oh, I can cut all that out. I go, don't you dare. Like, I want that in there. I want the atmosphere of the room I want this to people to know this is a Jersey Shore. Like, these people just came off the beach in New Jersey with their coolers and they have all their booze on the table and someone was drunk and knocked it over and it clanked. Leave all that stuff in there. I love that puts the character into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And sometimes the way that recordings are made, art, right? Music, comedy, whatever, anything live, leaving that stuff in, it's a supernatural. There might be some supernatural to, like a dick joke. Some crazy shit might be going on while you're telling a dick joke, and you're like, what the fuck is going, I don't know. But they're bottles
breaking or something.
The titles that Dave comes up with, I feel like how many do you have now that you have to credit Dave for?
Yeah, probably a half a dozen. Has he named any Broken Teeth songs over the years?
Yeah, Crash Landing Affair, that's Dave.
Dressing Up in Flames,
that's Dave.
Crash Landing Affair.
Do you know those songs?
Yes, but David, you might have a side hustle going here. You're giving away all these great titles for free.
Well, he's a wordsmith, so it's okay.
It's stuff that just comes to my head, just like Jason probably comes up with riffs all the time and just tosses them out there, whatever.
The phrases, I mean, the phrases and just lines, sometimes phrases are strong titles, but then and it's probably the same names you give for your bits, for your jokes, right? So it works the same fucking way. It's like, maybe the phrase is a little bit skewed and it works better as a line in the joke or in the lyric than it does for a title. It works the same way.
Right.
But, how do you come up with your material? Just raw material, like ideas. Okay. I mean, dick joke 1, dick joke 2. I mean, what the fuck? How does that work? How do you get the flow of your show? How do you put together a set? No, it's the same shit as, okay, Todd, Queensryche, how are you going to come up with your set list for the cruise?
Right. Well, we obviously, he had some help with that from myself and Courtney Cronin, but which is a whole other thing we've been doing, which is so much fun. And I think we've asked Jason to join us on one of these things and do a little stand up. But getting musicians to do stand up has been tons of fun. And I think for me, putting a set together is it's like whatever people laugh at, that's the stuff that stays, and whatever they don't laugh at is, I'm not so proud that I have to, bully something in on somebody. Like, where, it's like, all right, now I got all this material. How does it flow? So like what I said earlier, like for me, by the time you get to the end, you want a little relief at the end. Like you want this happy ending of, music is the healer kind of thing. So that's how I put this set together. But usually it's just like, I write a bunch of notes down, and when the stack gets kind of high, I shut out the whole world, and I sit and just focus on each thing, write it out by hand.
Yeah.
And hope it becomes something, But like I said, if it doesn't, it goes out. I'm still getting paid to entertain people,
Of course.
And the other thing that was really important on this album, especially, was not to be the old guy yelling, "Get off my lawn!" I want to make a point with some of this material, but I also don't want to preach to people either. It's still about making people laugh. So, you tell me what you think is funny, and that's what I'll deliver.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the bit towards the end, speaking of the closing of the album, where you talk about Alice Cooper as being like the first trans rock star or person or whatever, again, bringing something like that up in such a politically sensitive climate is ballsy, but it's true. You think about Alice Cooper. When we were all kids in the 70s, we were like, why is this guy named Alice? That's weird. And he is wearing lingerie and makeup and all this stuff.
And like I said, I didn't even know he was. I didn't even know it was a guy, because we didn't have social media back then. So,
Right.
Yeah, the first time you see him, it's like, okay, he's got heavy eye makeup on. He named himself Alice. He's the first trans person.
Alice with a 5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah.
So you're seeing this woman, only by name, of course. Well, I think that was the shock, and then he and other bandmates are wearing dresses and some kind of lingerie or lace, and they're holding a Michelob. They look like they're hanging out in the alley, drinking half, hot beer, and you can smell them. You're just looking at the photo, you can smell them. I think that's a very good portrayal of what he meant by Alice Cooper. You know how they got the name of that band, right? The Ouija board.
Yeah, some Ouija board story. Yeah.
Anyway, that's another story.
Don, tell us what's the status of That Rocks? What's going on there? You guys took a hiatus, and then recently you came back because you did a bit on the recent Monsters of Rock cruise.
I've seen the Mark Tornillo.
Yeah, the Mark Tornillo, singer for Accept. So, are you guys up and running again, or what's the status?
Yeah, well, we filmed 6 interviews on the cruise. Mark Tornillo was the first one to air. We got Jason McMaster. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Who?
He'll be coming up on the show pretty soon.
He's a dick.
And we talked to Glenn Hughes, and we talked to Joey and John from Armored Saint. We got a good selection of people coming up on the show. I think, we went like 22 weeks in a row. And it was, instead of sort of breaking it into like seasons, I think we just got to and we're just like, okay, let's give this a break, like as if it's between seasons of the show. And now we'll do it, we'll do it whenever it comes up. But like I said, we have 6 from the cruise, and then Jim and I just interviewed Wolf Hoffman from Accept, so that one's going to air. So we got a bunch, basically to fill out the summer. But yeah, for people who don't know me, Jim and Eddie from That Metal Show, doing a new show called That Rocks on YouTube. So just go to @ThatRocks on YouTube, and you'll.
Yeah, I feel you. Me and Jason have been doing this podcast for 3 years. Every week, a new episode for 3 years. So I feel your pain when you say, it gets kind of tough to come up with stuff and be ready and give up your weekends and all that stuff, But so far, we've still got plenty of gas in the tank. But I do understand what you're saying, and especially with you guys, because you're all very busy in your own world. So you're constantly traveling, and you're in different locations, and Jason and I are in different locations too, and we're also busy, but we kind of have our set locked down. You know, this is my studio, that's his studio. We're in a more permanent situation than you guys are. You guys seem to constantly be joining from a hotel room here and there or whatever. Eddie's in Vegas or New Jersey, back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, it's availability, so that's how it's related. It's all about calendar dates and times and being able to make it work because you got this thing called life
Yeah.
that gets in the
I'm
way,
glad to
right?
hear you guys are bringing it back because
Yeah,
I
me too.
watched it religiously. I love what you guys do. I loved it with that metal show. And then when you decided to do that rocks, I was like, great. These guys are back together. They're talking music. You guys are credible sources and you're fans. And so I like listening to you, you know, and so I'm glad you're doing that again. We talked earlier about some of my suggested titles for your upcoming comedy albums. And I always leave these comments on your social media related to that Jamieson show. So I wanted to ask you about that show and ask you like who's been your favorite guest on that show when you're steering the ship. It's not that metal show with Eddie Trunk and Jim Florentine. It's Don Jamieson's show. You're running it. Who's been your best interview or your most memorable guest?
Yeah, well, so I should say, there's 235 episodes of that Jamieson show that that has now come to an end because I am moving to another place with another concept, which I'll come back and talk with you guys about. But yeah, I interviewed 11 or 12 Rock and Roll Hall of Famers on my podcast, which was incredible, especially during COVID when everybody was home. So to get to get Alice Cooper anytime when he's home for any amount more than a day is almost impossible because of the way that guy tours. So Alice was big for me. Of course, just learning how to interview people solo was the biggest challenge of doing my own podcast because I basically learned how to interview people with two other guys.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, how do I interview people by myself? So it took some time. It was really challenging to because when we would do that metal show, obviously there was so many interviews where I went, God, I wish I would have said this, or I wish the interview would have went this way. If I was in charge, it would have went this way a little bit more. But then when it's just you doing it, it's like, oh, wow, this is just me. And like, how do I do this so that I'm not like everybody else? But yeah, to have like Alice on and David Coverdale and Matt Sorum and KK Downing and Halford and, all these guys. I mean, having Satriani on a couple times and just all these amazing, musicians and, those are ones like off the top of my head that, Nugent did it a couple times, which is, the easiest interview in the world. Just say, hey, Ted, how you doing? And then the hour goes by and it's over. But yeah, so a lot of great ones on there. And proud of the work I did there. Because like I said, man, learning to do it on your own for the first time, even though I'd interviewed hundreds of rock guys before that, it was a challenge.
Yeah, I totally get that. Prior to this podcast, all of my interviews have been me solo, conducting the interview for whatever publication I was writing for or whatever. But I remember in the early stages of doing this podcast, Jason and I were talking and I enjoy the format of, because he and I started this show, it was just the two of us talking back and forth on various topics. And then we brought in guests, and I felt like I relaxed a little more when there was a guest because it turns into more of a conversation rather than a formal interview.
Because me and Dave know each other, so it's like this common interest about something we already know everything or feel like we have our opinions about a record, a song, an artist where we'll just talk about their catalog or whatever. So we had, we're playing a game of ping pong, but we already know each other, right?
Yeah.
So having a guest on really added this whole new, like we're alive all of a sudden because we have, someone else to pick on.
Yeah, and even Jim and Eddie and I, with exactly. You know, we had to learn how to interview people together on that metal show in a controlled setting, and then we had to learn how to develop chemistry this way, like what we're doing right now. How do we mesh digitally in this format, in this modern format of doing it? So that was that's still been an adjustment for all of us to like sort of reconnect in a different way. And you know, I think that came fairly quickly, minus all the tech problems, which for people who have seen it, that is a fully recurring theme on the show.
I like how you guys are leaving it the fuck in there.
I know.
Because
the Carmine,
you could edit in post. You could edit in post, but you don't. You just leave all the fuck ups in there. It's fucking great.
Well, that's
the only one we couldn't air was Paul Rogers, unfortunately, because we never fully got him connected, on screen and talking, all together. But yeah, the Carmine piece one was a train wreck, and I emailed Carmine. I said, "Man, I'm really sorry," and he goes, "I said, we'll definitely do a part 2 when we get our shit together. So we'll definitely have Carm back on."
He's still waiting to hear from you.
He could. What's that?
He's still waiting to hear from you, right?
Yeah.
Well, you get your shit together. No, but he was, I feel your pain on that one too. Cause I mean, dude, what a legend, to have on your show. And it's like, oh man. And I watched the whole thing, dude, even though I couldn't hear it. I was like, I still have to pay attention. It's Carmine, man. And so I powered through it, but it was tough. And I felt your pain. I felt so bad for you guys because it was no fault of your own. It's just Carmine had crappy gear or bad connection or something. But yeah, I get it, man. But I love that you left it on there. It's just like your album, like you were saying earlier. You leave all the blemishes in there, and that's what makes it authentic.
Everyone needs to go check out. This is to people listening and watching. Everyone needs to check out Don Jamieson's No Sleep Till McSorley's, out now on Metal Blade Records. I blows my mind that Todd, the Motorhead management, sent you the actual high-res files of No Sleep Till Hammersmith.
His backdrop today is amazing.
And then you attempted to perfect it or fuck it up by putting your own face inside of it.
Yeah, I get photoshopped right there in the middle between Lemmy and Fast Eddie Clark, and of course Filthy back behind the drums, and I'm right underneath the bomber. So yeah. Todd Singerman is an absolute, he's an angel, and certainly you ask anybody, and if Lem was still alive, he'd tell you, without Todd Singerman, I don't think Motorhead would have risen to the level that they did, man. Wow. He was so much, a fourth member of that band and a fifth member when Wurzel was alive.
Yeah.
And he just cares about them so much, and I'm honored to pay tribute to them.
Yeah. Well, the album's great. I laughed my ass off. It's out now, isn't it? Or it'll be.
Well, at the time, I'm not sure when this is airing.
Couple of weeks.
Comes out April 19th.
Yeah. Okay.
It airs before the 19th. Obviously, you can pre-order it or pre-save it or pre-add it, whatever the terminology is. Or I'll have physical copies at my live gigs if you prefer a CD. And like I said, probably start the pre-sale on the vinyl, a couple weeks after the album comes out, and I'll have those available at live gigs as well.
Colored vinyl?
I'm still deciding.
Well, what color is McSorley's ale?
There's only two. There's light and dark. That's the other thing about McSorley's. They only have McSorley's ale.
Okay, I like it.
You can't order a Coke.
So it's a brew pub. They brew their own shit, and it's
no liquor. It's just you get light or dark McSorley's ale, and that's it.
That's it, and you have to order two at a time.
Badass, man.
No wonder you become friends with the people.
They come these little glass mugs that are legendary, and so you order. So if you go in with like 5 friends, you order like 50 beers.
Yeah.
And they come and they got them all in their hands and they put them down on the table and away you go.
That's old school. So the colored vinyl could be a light amber colored and the dark sort of dark ale, kind of
Yes.
coffee brown swirl. Maybe there can be like some suds in there. Do a little like clear, opaque kind of artsy fartsy, like it's, someone spilt the beers on the table. I don't know. Get crazy. Call Brian.
Yes, I've a lot to think about after this.
Well, I'm just, hey man, vinyl collectors out there, they know what I'm talking about.
I do too.
Yeah, of course you do.
That's all I do is collect vinyl. I don't do drugs. I spend my money on vinyl.
That's okay.
There you go. Well, if nothing else today, I now I want to make a trip to McSorley's, dude. You've sold me. So if I'm ever up on the East Coast, I'm stopping into McSorley's and I'm ordering 2 beers, and I'm going to make friends with the people from Norway that are sitting across the table from me.
I would just
I'll be right next to you.
I would just be a fly on the wall.
That'd be great.
I wouldn't be any fun at McSorley's because I'm not a drinker anymore. But the place sounds amazing, and it sounds like I would learn a lot.
No, Jason, you would have a great time because
I'm sure, man.
Because you have the personality. You're gregarious and outgoing, so you don't have to drink if you're there, but you just can't drink anything other than McSorley's ale.
Right. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
I'll drink his. And
yeah. See,
if he has to get 2, then you and I can share them, Don.
That's right. Exactly.
I'll do all of the toasting. I'll toast.
We're
You
here
be the
to help.
Toastmaster.
I'll sip and toast. Yeah.
Don,
Cool,
thanks
man.
so
Thank
much
you,
for
guys.
joining us today, man. It's always great catching up with you. This is your 3rd time on our show, and we appreciate that. The new album is called No Sleep Till McSorley's, Don Jamieson. It's on Metal Blade Records. You can go online and look for that. It's a great stand-up comedy album like you would expect from Don. We appreciate you spending time with us today, man. On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave with our special guest today, Don Jamieson on the Talk Louder podcast.
Thank you.